Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. I'm here to welcome you into the world of orgasmic living by hosting experts to discuss orgasmic topics such as nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Here, we will offer lifestyle lessons that can help you lead a fulfilling, joyous, and orgasmic lifestyle. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 95 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this new moon episode, we discuss open relationships. We speak with Rachel Krantz, author of the best-selling book, Open, an uncensored memoir of love, liberation, and non-monogamy. I also review the book Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, and the episode ends with a guided meditation with affirmations for open relationships. The guest interview in this episode really exceeded my expectations. I read Rachel Krantz's book Open a few years ago, when it came out, and I was part of a sex book club, and we would all agree, as a group of maybe say 6 or 7 women, all representing different relationship styles and sexualities, and we would all vote on the book to read. We would meet after about a month of reading the book and then share our reflections. And it was so interesting to compare and contrast how we had understood and how the same book had impacted us in very different ways. And it wasn't me who chose this book, Open, because normally I'm reading more non-fiction these days. I'm just reading kind of more self-help, spirituality, sacred sexuality. So a memoir about an open relationship, a polyamorous relationship, was something that I probably wouldn't have chosen to read myself. But I'm so glad that someone else chose it. I always think it's interesting in life to have an external guide. I think that happens sometimes when we travel for work. The destination might not be somewhere you'd ever considered going, but then you get there and you're like, oh, this is quite nice. I think it's always interesting to let someone else decide for you. So I was really glad that was the case here, because it opened, the book Open certainly opened my mind. And even though it's not a relationship style that I would want to live, I was definitely a fly on the wall, really intrigued and invested in the story and how things were unfolding. It was a story of Rachel, the writer, her personal relationship, and when she starts seeing a guy and who gradually starts to open the relationship. And she's also a journalist, so there's an element of investigation there as well, investigating and interviewing many people from different walks of life, different types of open relationships. And it's kind of if you're intrigued about the topic to see how the dynamics work, all the different types of open relationships, then this is definitely a good book to read, because you get that understanding of different dynamics and you also get that human experience as well. So it was a real page turner, very gripping, and the interview with her completely exceeded my expectations, and it was fascinating. So I'm not going to say much more about that. I will say that for myself, I think it's something I admire a lot. I remember watching a documentary. I've watched a lot of documentaries about polyamory because it's something that I click on, because I'm always wondering, how do they manage jealousy? I think I'm more of a person who likes to create a cocoon between two people. It feels safer to me. It feels more maybe familiar. But I don't like to have my monogamy demanded from me, because that's the kind of feeling of, it takes me back to being a teenager, when I had to be accountable to my parents about where I was going, who I was with, and I really hate that type of control that can happen in a relationship. I think monogamy is something that is given willingly, and having an agreement that there is no agreement, that's kind of more my vibe. Someone who's actively choosing me, not because I demanded it, but because that's the style of relationship that feels rewarding to them. Because at the end of the day, life is a gift, and I wouldn't want to impose something on someone else if they're not entirely into the same vibe as I am. I think it's nice when it's chosen by the individual, and also when someone is actually reaping the benefits of it, because all relationship styles have benefits. And if you're monogamous, it should be a choice, and also people should be open about it. The other day, actually, I met this guy who is a good friend of mine, and he made me an indecent proposal. And he's actually married with several children, and he was telling me that he's been married for a long time, the spark has gone, and then when he's traveling for work, he has a bit of slap and tickle here and there. And I was just thinking that might work for you, but then not telling your partner about it, or not having this kind of agreement of a maybe even a don't ask, don't tell situation. But that just felt very, very unfair to me. I think it's always best, if you're going to be sleeping with other people, to actually have your partner aware of that, also for their own health and safety, because in general, when people are in monogamous or seemingly monogamous relationships, people create a fluid bond, so they're not using contraception, and then the person who's unfaithful might be using condoms with someone else. But let's imagine they didn't one night, they wouldn't tell their partner that they'd put their health at risk. And then you wonder, what is love really? I think there's a lot of I have a lot of respect for people who are in the polyamorous community for that reason, because I think they are willing to have conversations that many of us avoid, or many of us are too afraid to have. And that's something I also admire from the BDSM community. There is this willingness to talk about desire in an open way that seems maybe taboo for many, desire for other people, and how to manage that as well, and stay connected. I think that's a very powerful thing that I take away from polyamorous people. It's definitely educational and eye-opening. I'm going to leave it at that for now. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, that I enjoyed the interview so much. So let's hear it for our expert today. Are you looking to strengthen your pelvic floor in a fun and engaging way? Introducing PeriFit, the pelvic floor trainer that combines biofeedback with interactive video games. With PeriFit, you can track your progress and improve your pelvic health while playing games with your vagina on your smartphone. It's easy, effective, and more importantly, it's fun. For a limited time, you can get 25% off with the code Venus15 at checkout. Visit perifit.co today and take control of your pelvic health with PeriFit. That's perifit.co. and use the code Venus15 for 25% off. The link is also in the show notes below. Strengthen, play, and thrive with PeriFit. Disclaimer: consult your healthcare provider before starting any new fitness program. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We speak with Rachel Krantz, the best-selling author of the book Open, an uncensored memoir of love, liberation, and non-monogamy. Rachel Krantz, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Yeah, I'm a journalist, and my book is the story of my first open relationship, which was quite tumultuous and interesting, and resulted in me coming into my queerness and kinks, and also ended up being emotionally abusive. So it's the story of how all those things were happening at once. And yeah, it's told as a narrative, so kind of reads as a novel, but because I'm a reporter, I was doing interviews and research along the way and afterwards to kind of contextualize my journey.
So how was that process, going from maybe writing about other people, interviewing other people, to actually telling your own story? What was that like? Was that something you always thought about, or did it just kind of land? How did that happen?
Yeah, it was kind of like my mode is often first person journalism.
Mm-hmm.
So I admire, writers like Joan Didion and John Krakauer who do sort of, first person journalism. They're a character in their own story. And I think especially with something related to sex and relationships, it just felt really natural to speak from my own experience because, like I say, I'm the subject I have the most access to,
Mm.
and like the most expertise in. So I just think for me it has always made sense to make sense of my experience through writing and reporting.
Mm. So what topics were you touching on before that? Was it always related to sex and relationships or not?
It often was, but not always. I mean, I started my career in radio, actually
Mm.
doing investigative journalism. So
Mm.
there was, yeah, different investigations that got me a lot of attention at a young age about uh, a sort of hazing abuse scandal within the Navy. And then another story on sex trafficking in Oakland. So I sort of started with some very serious stuff, but quickly realized that I preferred more, writing about interpersonal things and still wanted to take investigative approaches, but maybe not as strictly, just like investigative hardline stories. So then I started working, helped found this website called Bustle and was features editor there and focused a lot on lifestyle, sex and relationship stuff, but all kinds of things. I did a lot of reporting on cannabis culture and veganism. I'd
Mm.
say those have been kind of the two other main beats
Mm.
besides sex and relationships, but it's all interconnected.
Mm. I've got a copy of your book here.
Oh
Open.
yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I'll talk about my takeaways in a moment. So what inspired you to write such a personal book? Because it says here a fly on the wall account, and that's exactly how I would describe it.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Mm.
I mean, I think I really needed to make sense of that time in my life. And, the book is so much about a relationship where I incrementally lost faith in my own ability to discern my own judgment of reality, my own abilities. And so writing the book itself was really like a sort of looking through how did that happen? How did such a, high achieving young woman get to a point over the course of 4 years where she kind of thought that she wasn't capable without a man, or one man in specific, and
Mm.
how had she kind of lost herself to that degree. And I had a record because I had been recording along the relationship with Adam's consent. And so it was a sort of piecing together for myself, how had something that had been so harmful also been so crucial and important and beautiful in certain
Mm.
ways, and just sort of wanting to tell that story of how, things are not black and white. Our experiences are a lot of things at once, and people are not just victims or villains. There's a lot of gray in there. So I just thought my story and all the people I interacted with showed a really wide array of experiences with not just non-monogamy, but kink, queerness, abuse, all kinds of things. And I was kind of hungry for that narrative as I was living it, but found that a lot of the non-monogamy narratives, understandably, were more just kind of like positive accounts of long-term open marriages, maybe a heterosexual marriage that opens up after many decades together and stuff like that. And I wanted to see something that reflected like the messiness and the diversity I'd experienced.
Mhm. So how was the creative process? Was it therapeutic for you?
It was, yeah, it was therapeutic and re-traumatizing in certain ways at the same time. So, I was definitely writing it to reclaim my own narrative, which was very therapeutic, and feel authorship literally over my own story after I had sort of
Mm.
lost it in many ways. But I was also, perpetually putting myself back in some of the most traumatic scenes or experiences of my life. And as a writer, you you have to remove yourself enough that you can do that and keep working on it and write about it, but not so much that you lose the immediacy and truth of it. So it's this kind of dance of like staying close, but not too close, which can be very healing, but can also be triggering. So, yeah, I mean, I write in the book, there's sort of flash forwards that are often addressed to the reader, letting them in on the process, and how sometimes I'll realize as I'm writing a scene that my ears are ringing and my heart is beating fast, and I'll realize like, oh, of course I'm being triggered, and like that makes perfect sense. And then I would, step away to bake or to dance or to meditate or any of the other things that sort of kept me centered through the process. And then in writing it, I also had a great excuse to talk to dozens of therapists, which I did, and have them, help me contextualize my own story. So that in itself was really helpful and healing, because I sort of had assembled this whole team of experts to help me along the process.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed your book because I'm part of this group called Sex Book Club here in Barcelona. And we used to, we're not a meeting at the moment, but we used to meet about once a month or once every 6 weeks. And we're all a group of women who are very different in terms of their relationship status, relationship style, etc. And it was actually someone else who chose this book. So we all read the same book and then we come together and discuss it. So it was super interesting because I personally, I don't really consider myself at all non-monogamous, but it's a topic that I think is interesting for everyone, because I think the big question is, how do you manage it? I think that's a lot of people are very curious about this topic. I'm always attracted to documentaries about it and seeing how people, organize day-to-day stuff, like, because I mean, it's already complicated, having two people in a relationship. What are the dynamics like? How do people manage jealousy? And I really loved how you were showing the imperfections of it as well, and those challenges that going through it. And what I find really interesting is all this terminology that's new if you're not in that space. I mean, if we just go through some words like metamor, that's what is a metamor?
A metamor is your partner's partner or your partner's lover.
Because that would sound like a real nightmare for a lot of people in a,
Yeah.
from the monogamous kind of style. Any other words that we should know if anyone's interested in this type of, and throuple is another one that comes to mind when
Yeah, throuple would be three people in a
uh,
in a relationship, and there can be closed polyamorous
mhm,
relationships or open ones. So, for example, you have some thruples are together, but they don't let anyone else in. So that would be like a closed thruple. So
mhm,
that's one interesting distinction. I think like non-monogamy and polyamory are used synonymously a lot of the times, but non-monogamy is actually a broader term than polyamory. So polyamory would be like multiple loves, multiple relationships.
mhm,
It's in the word, more than one love. Whereas non-monogamy could encompass that, but it could also encompass things like swingers who only maybe have experiences together or that aren't love-based relationships or aren't outside of swinger spaces. Or it might encompass couples who have threesomes together, or couples who have don't ask, don't tell policies,
mhm,
or, one night stand policies or whatever. So it really, non-monogamy is a much broader term than polyamory is one interesting
mhm.
distinction.
Definitely, definitely. And I think what I admire from this relationship style is the openness and the willingness to speak about things that are taboo for more closed relationships, like the desire for someone else, etc. And when things are not spicy, having different solutions to try and overcome that and reconnect. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it taught me so much. And, after 8 years of being in the lifestyle, I'm currently in a monogamous relationship for the
Oh
last
wow.
year.
Hmm.
And that's not a comment on non-monogamy. It's just what's
Hmm.
best for my current relationship in life. And but, I told him when we went into it that I was open to trying monogamy again, but that very likely I would probably want something at least, monogamish down the
Mm,
line. So some sort of flexibility or freedom, though not
mm,
necessarily polyamory. And that even if I didn't need that, that I would need to always be in an open relationship in the sense of being able to talk openly and honestly about monogamy, about
mm,
the confines of being in a committed relationship, the feelings it can bring up of claustrophobia, or if you do get a crush on someone else, to be able to talk about that. Basically, that I didn't want monogamy to be an unexamined default
mm,
anymore, even if it was something we were going to do, that we're choosing it consciously, and that in choosing it consciously, it was going to remain an open dialogue, and that it wasn't going to lead to secrets. So,
mm,
yeah, that means stuff like talking about being attracted to other people, or talking about when those feelings of feeling constrained come up, or fear around commitment, or whatever it might be. That there's a commitment to a greater sort of openness, even within monogamy. And I think that's what a lot of people can learn from non-monogamous people, is not necessarily that they're going to want to open their relationship in that way, but just an examination of, what's often called the relationship escalator, and the idea of like, okay, we get together, we move in together, then we have babies, or we
mm,
get married, then we have babies, and then what? You die. And just
mhm,
this kind of like capitalist order and mentality. And I think one of the main things I've taken away is like, people should be allowed to design what's best for them, and that is allowed to shift and change. They don't have to cling so tightly to certain labels or models unless it's helpful. And things fluctuate over the course of a lifetime, and that's okay. That's natural. And there's ways to be with that aren't necessarily overly scary or inconsiderate of other people.
yeah, I love what you said, the relationship escalator. That's a really interesting term. Sometimes I wonder if those things come from ourselves, our own desires, or from society. That's something that we just don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mix, right? But I
Mm,
think definitely with that, it's often society, and that we see in movies and in our peers, that things are done in a certain order.
mm,
Or that there's these certain markers of things, that it's like, now you've arrived at your adult life, or this is what you get to throw a party over, or this is what is worth getting gifts over, like people throw a party for getting married or having babies, and not necessarily for completing an artistic project, or leaving a relationship that was unhealthy or something
mm,
like that. So we have these certain ideas that are often very like heteronormative, monoculture normative, of like what constitutes adulthood, and uh, a normal quote unquote trajectory of life. And people who fall outside that often are left feeling like, well, am I not really fulfilling my full potential, or am I doing something wrong? And often they're not. They're just living a life outside the standard narrative, and maybe that's a life that's better for them. And so I think it's, yeah, just about us all being able to feel as free and authentic in our lives as possible, and that there's really like infinite permutations as to what that might look like, and no relationship model, no type of non-monogamy or monogamy is the right answer for everyone. It's gonna always be bespoke.
mm, for sure, for sure. One thing I really loved about this book that really changed my ideas was about the swinging, that what you discovered about swingers. Because I think maybe misconception, but thinking of swingers, I just think of people who are going to these clubs for like sex with strangers or something. But what I really found in your book was that they were people who had very clear boundaries. So that's something that I found. I thought, oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly swingers can be people going to parties, or the lifestyle resorts that I depict in the book.
Mm,
But yeah, it's most of the people I interacted with and got to know, they were really in committed partnerships, and sometimes their relationships looked a lot more like polyamory, like they might have outside relationships, but there was sort of that idea of like the marriage in that traditional way is primary.
mm,
And they were often married, and there was a sort of clear prioritization of like the what's best for the relationship over the individual, which is
mm.
sometimes a difference compared to certain forms of non-monogamy, where you might say like it's a little more focused on individual freedom. So yeah, I learned a lot from them, and honestly, a lot of them seemed really happy, like they found a way to balance having freedom and novelty with not too much jealousy, because
Mm.
there was often more compartmentalization happening or rules around where these interactions and when these interactions could take place. Although again, not for all of them, but yeah, just met a lot of people who it seemed to be working really well for them.
Yeah, you just said something that just reminded me of this debate that I saw on Ellen Fisher. You know Ellen Fisher? She had yeah,
Yeah.
she had a really interesting debate of monogamy versus polyamory.
Okay.
Obviously, it depends on the couples you're choosing, but it seemed from that was a takeaway that I got, that the polyamorous couple were very much into the individual growth, whereas the monogamous were more about the couple. I just thought that was like you just said now. So it's trying to find that balance as well.
Yeah.
When do you put the
Yeah.
couple before yourself? I think we should always put ourselves first, and then hopefully it's gonna align, you know. Mm.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you don't, even in monogamy, you don't want the couple at the expense of the individual. Of course, there's
Mm,
going to be compromise.
mm,
And I think the couple is its own third entity, sort of, that you have
mm,
to consider. But if the individuals get lost, that's a problem as well, because yeah, then you just kind of lose a sense of freedom, I think, and independence.
mm. So you mentioned the word jealousy. That's one of the biggest fears, I suppose, from people, or maybe misconceptions as well. Because I think maybe people from outside that lifestyle think that they just deal with it in a very mature way, but that obviously it still exists. And what was your learning about that, and what do you what was your journey about jealousy and seeing a partner with someone else? Because that for a lot of people is kind of like a nightmare, to think about. So how did you deal with that? Or do you have any tips for people who are in open relationships now to deal with jealousy?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the book is about me really struggling with jealousy,
Mm,
and that was important for me to be honest about, because again, so many of the guides are kind of like how-to guides, and I sort of felt like, wow, all these non-monogamous people are just like higher beings that have
mm,
transcended their ego, and if I could just be like them, I'd be more evolved. And in reality, for most people, jealousy is really challenging, and it's not necessarily going to be a pleasant thing that are partners with other people, but it might still be worth it, in order to have those freedoms yourself or for other reasons. And for me, I saw how there was a sort of exposure therapy element of like things were incredibly uncomfortable and they never got comfortable,
mm.
but things that upset me in the beginning, by the time I was further along in the journey, were no longer as challenging. But the thing was, there was always like new things to be
Oh, okay.
challenging and upsetting. So, I mean, that's part of why at this point I'm okay with being in a monogamous situation, is because after several different relationships and eight plus years of this, that I was still struggling with jealousy. And I kind of just got to a point where I'm like, I don't want to do something that's hard on my nervous system and body. And I
Mm,
felt like my ethics, my mind, and even heart was saying, yes, no, monogamy is beautiful. Like, this is aligned with your ideas and your dreams. And then my body was telling me something else. And there was a lot of kind of um, white knuckling and attempts at like spiritual bypassing or using drugs or meditation or whatever else to just kind of rise above. And, I think that if you're doing something that's making your life harder than it needs to be, it's good to be honest with yourself about that and examine if that really is wise. Um, and so for me, I'm definitely not closed to forms of non-monogamy in the future, but I think
Mm.
that I've sort of had to admit, yeah, it doesn't seem like with my particular childhood wounds and attachment style that polyamory works that well. It seems to bring up a lot of old trauma, and maybe that'll change, and I'm open to it, but I don't need to force it either just because I'm feel like that's the braver or more ethical way to be. Um, and same thing for some people that non-monogamy actually feels more natural to them because of their personality or because of their wiring or their childhood or whatever it is. They might be forcing themselves to be monogamous and it might feel really uncomfortable to them on like a bodily level. So I think, yeah, just one of the lessons I've learned over the years is like it's really important to listen to your body. Your body will tell you. And that doesn't mean that if you're trying non-monogamy, you should quit as soon as you have
Mm.
an upset stomach or uncomfortable sensations, because there's a lot to learn from working through those things. But, you know, it's also important to keep listening and admit if it's just too much.
Mm. So how have you, what have you learned from polyamory that you're applying to monogamy now? I mean, how do you see that it's helped you in your current situation?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so much. I think, like I said, having really open
Mm.
dialogues about, sex, about relationship structure, about um, about realities of attraction to other people or fears of being tied to only one person for the rest of your life, or feelings of like, oh my gosh, if we commit to being together forever, does that means I never am gonna fall in love again or something?
Mm.
And how do I deal with, letting go of that idea? Just open dialogues around everything. Um, and also just a sense of like play and creativity and um an openness to things always evolving and changing. I think that that's a lot of what appealed to me about non-monogamy, is like it's so admits the fact that everything is impermanent. And monogamy is one way that we try to kind of trick ourselves into
Mm.
thinking, no, like I've locked this down, or like this is stable. But like life will tell us otherwise with, illness and death and
Mm.
everything else that happens. Like nothing is for sure. So I think taking that vantage of just like things are changing in every moment, they will continue to change. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have a secure foundation, but just because things are this way now doesn't mean this is the way they're going to be forever, and sort of expecting that and befriending that reality instead of fighting it or trying to pretend that it's not true, or that in some ways we're not fresh to each other in every moment. I think that's one of the beautiful things about non-monogamy, is it can kind of remind you, oh yeah, I don't know every side of this person, or I
Mm.
can never possess them in every way. But I think you can take that attitude to a monogamous relationship too, and kind of try to see them clearly, which is as new in every moment actually, and never really fully yours, and that a lot of desire stems from sometimes befriending that uncomfortable reality.
Mm. Another term I learned from interviewing someone else called shrimp teeth. You know, shrimp teeth. She makes content
Oh
about.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a long time ago I interviewed her, but I heard the term NRE, new relationship energy. So how do you think, do you have any tips about how to maintain NRE in a monogamous relationship after having lived a polyamorous relationship? I mean, how can that newness, you just mentioned something feeling new. Do you have any tips about that? Because obviously, so you
Yeah.
can never know
Oh man.
everything about someone, even if you're just with one person.
Yeah, I mean, I'll
Mm.
let you know this relationship's only a year old, so I am still
Mm.
probably in NRE, and I have a lot of fear around what's gonna happen when it fades, when it goes to
Mm.
that more companionate style, and then I don't,
Mm,
have other people potentially for
mm,
that feeling? Can I let go of that? I mean, I think for me, it's about, yeah, seeing the other person with fresh eyes, continuing to play and explore. Like for us, kink is a major part of our relationship. So that's one way that things continue to be like new and fresh and have new lenses to them, being able to see the person through other vantage points, like whether that's, in a role play scenario
mm,
or just in exploring different sides of yourself. I think also really enjoying the fact that so many friendships can have delicious triangulation to them without going into the sexual realm. But, I have many friends who, when the three of us hang out, it's like really juicy, and it's like, it's not without some erotic undertones, but it's also boundaried,
mm,
and I think a lot of people actually have friendships or relationships like that where there's kind of some triangulation at play, and you're able to see your partner through a different lens, through the way they're interacting with your friend or through the way they're interacting at work or with their family or whatever, and just kind of trying to see them from that distance, and with a curiosity of like not assuming that you know them fully, and not, and kind of imagining how other people are seeing them. I think about like Esther Perel. She's surveyed lots of people. She talks about how, like, basically she found that when people found their partner most attractive was when they were watching them do something where they're in their element. Like, so if they were a teacher, watching them teach, or if they were
mm,
a writer, watching them do a reading or something, something where there's that removal and that perspective of, um, wow, like they're accomplished, or wow, they're really doing their thing, and I'm seeing them from this distance, or I'm seeing other people admiring them too. So I think continuing to prioritize, those those things that we enjoy doing ourselves, our own creative and professional and whatever else goals, so that our partner can admire us in that way from a distance, um, is also helpful.
mm. I've just written down here because I've been writing down like when you said role play, I think role play is such a fantastic way to explore alter egos, not just be yourself all the time, but you could actually create different characters, and that could be a kind of halfway between, monogamy and polyamory. So you have these different personas almost in your relationship. So it gives
Mhm.
you the freedom. Because that's something I used to love about BDSM and kink was because I feel like I'm quite a good person, but I love being the bitch, very dominant, and just having that freedom, to
Yeah.
become someone else. And that's very, very liberating. And once it takes me what you were talking about just now. Reminds me of this film that I saw once years ago. I didn't see the full film. I just like switched the TV on and watched. And it was this woman who's very sophisticated, like short skirt at this bar, but in a very kind of dingy bar, like really kind of a dive bar. And she was very elegant. She looked really out of place. And all the guys were just staring at her, trying to buy her drinks and stuff. But there was one guy in the corner looking at her more. Then he comes over and buys her a drink. And the next scene, they were having sex in the car. And the next scene, they're going home and paying the babysitter. So I just thought, wow, that is so cool.
It is cool. I love that role play. That's like my
Mm,
favorite one.
mm,
Is just pretending you're strangers,
mm,
but even just as yourselves can be really juicy. So just
mm.
like kind of pretending, like my partner and I have pretended that we're like meeting at the gym,
Uh-huh.
but we're still ourselves. But it's just like, how would you feel like if they were in the gym at the same time as you, and you're checking them out from afar, and maybe you try to talk to them or not, like,
Mhm,
and you can have all kinds of like alternate timelines, or you could pretend to go on your first date again, but as you are now, or
mm,
as different characters, whatever you want. But I mean, I think it's pretty juicy way to see the person from afar again, as their authentic self, of like, if you've been together a long time, can you take them on a first date again? What questions
mhm,
would you ask them? What do you not know? Or how can you imagine not knowing certain things? And feel attracted to them all over again.
I can see the ingredients for another book here. That'd be so interesting, but to do the complete opposite. Because that woman who wrote "Calling in the One," you know about that book, Catherine
Yeah,
Thomas, and then she wrote "Conscious Uncoupling." So she had
yeah.
these completely different, relationship stages, like coming in and then leaving. But that could be something that you might could be good at, especially coming from with your perspective.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think definitely my work will continue to be around these themes. I don't know
Mm,
if some of it will be fiction or
mm.
nonfiction. It's definitely, my friend joked, she's like, "Oh, your next book should be called Closed." And I was like,
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
but I think I just for sure it'll be what it's continued to be about the nature of desire and what does it say about the finite nature of life when we kind of rage against our limited experiences or try to expand our experiences. But I would certainly never write something that's advocating for monogamy over non-monogamy.
Mm.
That's not the lesson of my
Yeah.
story at all, and I continue to be really agnostic about what the future holds for
That's the
sure.
best way, just to let it surprise you. There's a
Yeah.
song by Tori Amos, and I can't remember the name of it, but she talks about her guy leaving her for someone else, and then the line is, maybe she's just pieces of me you haven't seen.
Mm,
There's so many, facets to different people that, sometimes your partner doesn't always stimulate the same thing that can be stimulated by someone else that you've just met.
definitely.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
what's so appealing about non-monogamy is you
Mhm.
see how you have all these different sides of yourself that come out with someone
Mhm.
else. And we can't expect one person to give us all of that. So it's kind
Mhm.
of, if you choose monogamy consciously, you have to reconcile that and maybe also look, can your friendships give you some of that? Can other relationships give you some
Mhm.
of that? Is that something you're willing to compromise?
Mhm. So you talk about gaslighting in this book. What exactly is gaslighting? That's the theme that's in this book.
So gaslighting is an oft overused term, but a very real phenomenon that's pretty psychologically damaging when it's about a prolonged pattern. There might be individual instances of gaslighting in any relationship, but when it's kind of part of the culture and an ongoing thing, it's about kind of systemically discrediting the other person's emotional reality. So you really see and open exactly how that happens, and it's not overnight, but it's through a lot of rhetorical questions and a lot of undermining of the other person's emotions and experience and sort of a rewriting of their experience, either outright disputing that their memories happened or um, telling them that it's actually this way, or planting ideas of like, if you just weren't so fear-based, you would be like this. So it's a kind of discrediting of someone else's emotional reality and a sort of denial of their memory and experience, I would say, is kind of the most succinct definition, but it has many, many components that you can
Mm.
read about in the book.
Mhm. And so what are you working on now?
So now I'm editing for a nonprofit called Sentient, and that's a lot about animals and environment. So that's my day job, but I'm working on a novel that's a lot about themes of love, desire, and death, I would say. And I'm also potentially working on another nonfiction project that's on really similar themes. So it's kind
Mm.
of a little unclear to me yet if it'll be memoir or novel, but I'm trying to sort of work in both modalities and see what's best.
Mm. So are you vegan?
I am, yeah.
Oh yeah, me too, yeah. I just
Nice.
interviewed Dr. Michael Greger. That was my penultimate
That's awesome.
episode. And also Dr. Joel Furman. To me, it's like a
Cool.
mega spiritual thing. And the orgasmic lifestyle is about reaching climax in all areas of life. So it goes
Yeah.
beyond sexuality. But for me, it's like it just makes so much sense. I'm so passionate about it. Do you see a link between veganism and relationships and sex?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's a lot of why non-monogamy appealed to me so much. I became vegan at the same time as I entered my first non-monogamous relationship, so they've always been related for me. But veganism is much more like if there's any identity I cling to tightly, it would be veganism, probably because I'm like, yeah, unless it's like for some reason I can't anymore, I'm sure that's for life for me because no other decision I've made has just reaped so many benefits in terms of like my health and just feeling aligned in my ethics in life, and opening me up to new kinds of empathy. But yeah, I think like non-monogamy definitely has that idea of like you don't own anyone's body.
Mm,
Um, that that is a big part of why I'm vegan is like really just I don't believe that I have the right to anyone else's life or reproductive system. And if you are, even consuming dairy, that's based on the exploitation of mostly female reproductive systems and enslavement of it. So I just felt like as a feminist, I couldn't, once I learned the real facts of how much suffering goes into those foods, I just couldn't
mm,
endorse it or be part of it. And yeah, I mean, I think I still, even though I'm in a monogamous situation now, I still take that approach of I don't own my partner's body.
mm,
Like we have an agreement, but it's not, I
mm,
don't fundamentally think you can own another person and that those sorts of agreements only work when they're fully consensual. And yeah, with animals, they can't consent and very clearly give lots of signs of, fighting against their captors and grieving and suffering that they they don't consent to what's being done to their bodies.
mm. There's also a big world of veganism in sexual wellness products like lubricants and condoms. People didn't even know that I didn't even know that
Yeah.
condoms were not vegan.
Yeah,
It's a big
the
thing. Also,
lambskin
it's
ones.
very hard. Also relationships with a non-vegan as well. That can be quite hard to deal with.
It can, yeah. Although I've found it's like the most efficient way of making a new vegan for sure.
Oh, really?
It's a good litmus test. Like if someone can't respect that about you and it's so fundamental, I don't, you know, I mean, with my current partner, when we met, he was vegetarian or pescatarian, and I didn't push any of it on him, but within a few months of him learning how I cooked and did it, a lot of people just need the exposure. They just need to learn more about the dairy industry or whatever else it is. And so he came to it on his own. And that's how it's been for me with my last relationship too. It's just like, yeah, a lot of people are just looking for a push or the right support. So, and in my experience, people who haven't been able to respect that I'm vegan or like, order a hamburger on a first date with me, like that's kind of a red flag because you're sort of not thinking about how your actions might make the other person feel. And so, yeah, if someone can't even like be minorly inconvenienced in that way, then it's probably a sign that they're not going to put in other sorts of effort. So for me, it's been a useful filter.
And also the thing about kissing as well after.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I don't feel like kissing you after that. Yeah.
Yeah, my house is vegan. I let people come in with non-vegan shoes, but they have to leave them
Oh,
at the
yeah.
door. But I mean, yeah, it's nice to have a fridge that only has plants in it. It's a very nice
Yeah.
feeling. Hmm.
Yeah.
So what is the book that changed your life? This is a question I ask all of my guests because I have a whole shelf here. You can't really see it now, but it's in the dark. But I have a big
Yeah.
shelf of my guests' books. So I'll be adding your book to
Oh,
that now. This because I'm a big reader. So it's
thank
amazing to
you.
actually read books and then speak to the authors. Are you a big reader?
I am. I'm a
No.
voracious reader, as I
Okay.
think all writers should be. I'm
Okay.
suspicious of any writer who's not a big reader.
So what's the book that changed your life?
Oh my God. How do I choose? Um, hmm. it's really hard to just choose one. But I think in writing this book, the heroine's journey was really important, and you see that throughout the book. It's by Maureen Murdoch, and it's this kind of feminist reframing of the typical hero's journey structure in a more feminine lens of like the arc that women's lives might go through. And it was super useful to me in thinking about the journey I had been on over the course of that relationship, and how seeing how it kind of really fit into these different, heroine's journey steps that she said helped me kind of conceive of my story and my life as worth talking about, worth telling, and kind of, reconceptualizing some of these ideas of like what constitutes growth, what constitutes a story, and how historically that's been often like very Western, very masculine in terms of like a battle and a climax, at war with someone. And what are these ways that, feminine, and that can be true for men as well, but I'm taking a more feminine lens on that kind of arc or story. How does that change the way we think of, yeah, like what constitutes an arc, what constitutes a journey, what constitutes a victory, all these questions. So yeah, that was an influential book for me.
Amazing. And do you have a phrase or affirmation that you live by?
Ooh. Yeah, I have quite a few, but one that pops in my head a lot is when you don't know what to do, pause.
Mm,
I don't remember if someone told me that or if I just started telling it to myself, but I found that really helpful for like big decisions or just like little ones where I'll sometimes realize I'm caught in a sort of frenetic energy and like a sort of craving mindset of like, oh, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do this, planning my whole day out, and then be like, should I do this or this? And then I'll be like, okay, just pause. Like that's my cue. And you don't know what to do, pause. Or if you, uh, you know, for bigger questions, don't know what to do, pause. It's been helpful.
good advice. So where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me, probably the best place is on Instagram at Rachel Krantz, just my name, and my DMs are open. I always love like hearing from readers or talking to people, being helpful how I can. My website's racheljkrantz.com. And yeah, I have a podcast, Help Existing, that I haven't posted new episodes in a little while, but there's a big archive if you want to hear me in conversation with some of the people in Open and other just thinkers, different authors and teachers and experts of all sorts.
What topics? Any different topics?
It's basically, the premise is just anything that's helpful. So yeah,
Okay,
it's just lots of different stuff related to sex and relationships, related to yeah, mindfulness, or lots of things. So yeah, there you can kind of sort through. It's clear in the title what the topic is.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Orgasmic Lifestyle podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. It was lovely to talk with you.
The book I'm reading now is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. This book has been on my list for a very, very long time. It's been recommended to me by several friends, and I've read incredible reviews of it as well. And I was very, very curious about what does it mean, the green lights. I also like Matthew McConaughey. I especially loved the film How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or something. That was just so good. He's very good at playing the rom-com hero. And in this podcast, if you've been listening for a while, you'll know that I always ask my guests, what is the book that changed your life? And also, what is the quote or affirmation that you live by? And sometimes this is quite challenging to answer for my guests. And I start to think about what is my phrase that I live by. And I realize that it is never wish your time away, because time is our greatest asset, and one day time will run out. So even if you're waiting for a bus, or you're in a situation where you want time to pass faster, I think we should always just take a moment and just be grateful for the present. Massive cliche, I know. But I'm mentioning this because I actually bought the book recently when I was in the UK in the airport. And I was on a 2-hour flight back to Barcelona, and I was so dying to get back. And I was on the aisle seat, which is I don't really like the aisle seat on it in a plane. But instead of complaining or just wishing my time away, I read 90 pages of green lights, and it was definitely time well spent. It was so gripping, this story. There's lots of what I particularly liked about it was how he navigated his life and kind of fell into opportunities without being strategic about how he ended up as a Hollywood actor. It was so interesting, and also made me think about my favorite parts of the book were when he was talking about rom-coms and how the roles that he got all the time. He talks about the guy like chasing the girl, losing the girl, and then getting her back, all this type of dynamics that we often see in rom-coms. And it made me think about my own personal relationships that I've lived, and how I believe that, the male should be the pursuer. Maybe that sounds a bit backwards, but it's nice when the guy, finds, or how a guy acts when he is all in with someone. I think maybe that could also be interpreted as a dangerous message. I know people say that sometimes in terms of, relationships, we have these unreal expectations. But I think sometimes reality can be better than a Hollywood rom-com if you've actually felt and experienced real love. But then when he got very good at rom-coms, then he wanted to kind of change and do different types of movies, more kind of maybe serious storytelling, and then he was getting typecast as like the heartbreaker. And he kept saying no to the offers he was getting, to a point where even when offers increased and the offers died down, he stuck to his principles, which is very admirable when you don't have a plan B. But I'm sure, having such big income, after doing Hollywood movies, then you have there's less risk. They're not the same risk as most people live. And also, though, when he describes how when he met his wife, it's just really fascinating about how he'd always wanted to be a father. And also what was interesting for me was when he talks about his rise to fame, and then how important privacy is. The more public you become, the more important privacy becomes as well, which some people might not understand, but I'm feeling that quite now at the moment. I've lived it several times in my career, because I've had peaks and troughs of popularity when I've been publishing books, or I've been in the press, and then suddenly I get very protective of my private life. And I do also have this terrible need to offload my private life to friends. And sometimes I've made the mistake of sharing too much with people who are sharing my private stuff with people that I don't know. And those people I don't know can go to my Instagram and know all this private stuff about me because of their connection to a friend that I've told it all to. And so now I'm just really dialing back on who I tell stuff to, and making sure that they are only fully trusted people. Because the more public you become, the more sacred the private life is. And, speaking of sex podcasts as well, I recently started watching this Netflix series. I can't remember the name of it now. Nobody Wants This or something. I mean, what a terrible, terrible name. I mean, of all names you could come up with. I think that's just so uncreative. But what was interesting about it is that it's a sex podcast host who falls in love with a rabbi. So it seems very unlikely. But the dynamic of the sex podcast, which is, I have a sex podcast, obviously, is that they are talking about their dating life in real time, which that can be a format that can be very alluring for the listener. But I that's not something that I want to do personally. I do speak about my personal life, but I tend to focus more on my reflections. I don't want to make the people in my life protagonists of anything. I don't want to kind of raise the wrong type of curiosity, because at the end of the day, my private life is super, super private. I'm very happy to share things about my reflections on relationships, on sexuality, because I know that I have this gift in that I I am very open and non-judgmental about the way I speak about sexuality, which kind of gives other people permission to feel more comfortable with their sexuality. But something in the Matthew McConaughey's books was loose lips sink ships, which was a kind of an expression I'd never heard of. But that kind of got me thinking a lot about who I share things with, and who needs to know about my privacy. Anyway, so yeah, Green Lights, it has many aspects of the life journey from family, which is interesting, his family dynamics, where he grew up, and then just kind of meandering, I'm not sure if that's the right word, or through life, and then ending up in places that he never dreamt of, really, and just from being open, having a good attitude, and sometimes the challenges that he faced as well. And love how he found his wife, which is, I loved that part of the book, and becoming a father, and then also when you become famous, not just the quest for privacy, but also the story of wanting to find spiritual meaning in things. Because I think when you have exponential success, which was the topic of our last podcast, I made a meditation for exponential success. It can be a very dangerous place to be, even though that can be the goal for many people. I think there's always the danger of excess and being around yes people who are just saying yes to you all the time, and you're not really sure who you can trust. And it's so important to stay grounded in those situations, because there's so many stories of the artist's struggle, all this authenticity, then they have a big break, then there's massive excess, then they lose everything through excess and just bad choices, a bad environment. And I think it's so important to stay grounded. So I was actually reading that book when I was coming up with my last episode with the meditation for exponential success, because I realized myself that I was afraid of exponential success, because I've seen these terrible stories around me so many times, and I want to stay grounded and spiritual right now, so that when my exponential success arrives, I am going to be so ready. Anyway, so yeah, Green Lights is a great book. If you are interested in memoirs, you don't have to be a fan of Matthew McConaughey, but I think he is very interesting after reading this book. I did like him before, not that I didn't know too much about him, but this has definitely impressed me. So that is the book I'm reading now, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Now it's time to slow things down as we prepare for this episode's guided affirmations meditation. It's probably not a good idea to listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. I trust my partner. I honor our open, honest communication. I communicate my needs clearly and lovingly. Our love thrives in honesty and transparency. I am comfortable with my emotions, and I honor them as part of my growth. I respect my partner's connections with others. I am grateful for my open relationship. I trust my partner. I honor our open, honest communication. I trust the journey of our relationship. It evolves in a way that serves us both. I am confident, loved, and fully supported by my partner. and myself. I trust my partner to honor our agreements just as I do. Love is infinite, and I am open to sharing it. I am grateful for my open relationship. I trust my partner. I honor our open, honest communication. Our relationship is strengthened by our mutual respect and freedom. I trust myself to set and respect healthy boundaries. I celebrate my partner's happiness and experiences outside of our relationship. I am confident in my ability to navigate new experiences with grace. I am grateful for my open relationship. I trust my partner. I honor our open, honest communication. I release the need for control. I know that trust builds a stronger bond. I feel secure in my worth, knowing love and connection are abundant. Jealousy is a natural emotion, and I handle it with openness and compassion. I am grateful for my open relationship. I trust my partner. I honor our open, honest communication. I embrace love in its many forms, trusting it will deepen our connection. Our relationship is unique and designed by us, for us. I feel safe expressing my desires and exploring new experiences. I embrace the freedom to grow, both individually and as a couple. I am grateful for my open relationship. Are you looking to strengthen your pelvic floor in a fun and engaging way? Introducing PeriFit, the pelvic floor trainer that combines biofeedback with interactive video games. With PeriFit, you can track your progress and improve your pelvic health while playing games with your vagina on your smartphone. It's easy, effective, and more importantly, it's fun. For a limited time, you can get 25% off with the code Venus15 at checkout. Visit perifit.co today and take control of your pelvic health with PeriFit. That's perifit.co and use the code Venus15 for 25% off. The link is also in the show notes below. Strengthen, play, and thrive with PeriFit. Disclaimer: consult your healthcare provider before starting any new fitness program. find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/venusohara. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.